As the cosmos connects the universe, water connects life. At the Cosmic Water Podcast, we're exploring the history, mythology, and future of the sacred land known as San Antonio.
Well, welcome to another episode of Cosmic Water Podcast. I'm Angela.
I'm Maureen.
And we have Luis Escalante with us. So
Hello.
glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
A planner with an architect firm. But what I thought was so interesting was looking at your artwork, your collages that you have on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I guess go ahead if you want to talk about the collages, because that's the initial connection that I liked.
Yeah, for sure. The account is called Eaten Up by the Sea on Instagram. And it's, I think I had mentioned to you in messages saying that the collages on there are just kind of introductory thinking ways, like a design thinking way for this book project I have. And the collages show a lot of maps, geological maps of Texas and the fault zone, the Balcones fault zone, overlaid with images of like native art or images, hydrology maps too, like kind of focusing specifically along the like aquifers and overlaying images of like seashells that you'll find in Texas, specifically in like the hill country area. And all of these collages kind of have a hyper focus on one specific aspect of all these things. So I have a collage that's focusing on oil and fossils on West Texas. And then I have another one that's got a map of like Highway 35 going across Texas and then having it overlaid with images of seashells.
All of this is showing how the ocean just like used to go, I guess, in like it was in West Texas, the coastline, and then it just like moved.
Yeah. So a long time ago, about 500 million years ago,
Wow.
the sea was in the northern part of Texas, northern and western Texas. And then sometime between there and 200 million years ago, the Balcones had an uplift or a fault, and there were multiple different breakings of the earth where you then had a reverse. So then West Texas, northern Texas became higher than the Gulf area, and the sea kind of receded into the Gulf. And then from there, you have this oscillating shoreline that kind of went back and forth across. The Balcones escarpment is basically like this. You can think of that as like the shoreline oscillation. And so
Wait,
the
I'm
collages.
sorry, what is the Balcones?
Escarpment?
Yeah, like what and where?
I'm not. Yeah, so it starts like, I want to say McAllen, and it's
Okay.
like a wide band, and it goes all the way up through Waco. And this whole band, it might go past Waco, is just kind of a geological like uplift or a fault line, almost like an ancient fault line that became active over those hundreds of millions of years ago. And and what you see now today is like all of the Texas's big cities are along this escarpment. And I always thought that was an interesting thing, because it's like you have ocean life for millions of years here in this huge band of Texas. It dies off as the sea recedes into the Gulf. And then you have people, natives, coming in and settling in the area, finding that this area is very holy and filled with tons of water. And the Spanish come through. They find this area to be very resourceful. There's some trauma with that coming into the new world. And then, yeah, like this then becomes still like a huge basis for life, for organic life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you just have then you have the modern world now, so to
Yeah.
deal with. Yeah.
I was looking at all or several of those pictures anyway in your curriculum.
Mhm.
I came across, right? And I noticed that, so I know exactly what you're talking about now, balconies, I guess that it's called. And it has the 4 springs
Yeah.
along it too. And that's where like, so it seems like for a long time, the ocean coast or the Gulf Coast was like right there
Yeah.
where those springs are.
Yeah, so those springs were, as I understand, were made as the escarpment was uplifting and there were many different lifts and like the earth was shearing across itself. So what you would have had was like a solid piece of earth. And then as this fault line was being reawoken or something like that, you have these pockets that ended up being developed over millions of years. And with holes from the crust of the earth, the rain would fall into those areas and like start to fill up, and those became the springs. And that's as far as like I can give like a very rough.
And filling up the aquifer.
Yeah, and that's how the aquifers were made too.
Yeah, that's what I read once about like an aquifer. Maybe it was in Kansas actually, which is where you're from, right? I think it was. Is there an aquifer there?
I'm not really versed on Kansas geology.
There was an aquifer somewhere in that, like, I don't know, either central or mid-east part of the country. But I was reading about how all of the water in there, and I guess this is true for all aquifers, but it was this one specific I was reading about, was that all of the water in there is from rainwater from potentially millions of years ago.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was fascinating. And so the Edwards Aquifer would be the same, which is the aquifer under us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're drinking our water from the aquifer, is it rainwater from millions of years?
Basically rainwater. But this is the issue with like the modern world and our whole development across this land. Because it's not just Edwards. There's Carrizo. There's Barton Springs. We've used up like we drain the Edwards Aquifer pretty heavily, like just for drinking water. So when it does rain, we're really like happy, and that's why you see like on the news channel, like
they're like reporting it every day, like it went up an inch or whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
And so that's like the beginnings of this Instagram account is to kind of visually have a framework or some kind of precedent for the book, which kind of will go over like specific stuff and like the formation of the earth, the formation of Texas. But yeah, the collages are super fun to make. I do like research while I'm making the collage, so it's like a process of reading some kind of dense geological material and then trying to translate that into something visual.
And it does translate, because I understood it, you know, like I didn't know you, or we didn't, you know, but like I was like looking at this and I'm like, this guy, he's researching the stuff that we're talking about, you know, just by looking at the art. So
so we had on our 2 guests ago on our second episode guests who spoke about those springs, those 4 springs, and their placement on rock mural art. What is it called?
Oh, White Shaman?
Yes, on the White Shaman mural. Is that something that you were familiar with?
No.
Before here?
I had met Angie earlier this week, and she had mentioned it to me. And I'm going to probably go see it later this month or next month.
nice.
What did seeing it mean for you? Like all the research that you've done and the, you know, coastline being on those 4 springs. What's it like when you heard that it was like on this art from how many 1,000 years ago was the White Shaman mural?
I don't even know.
I think they're saying right now, I don't remember. I think 2000, but there's
I
like
thought it
argument.
was
There's an argument about that.
2002.
That it's a lot older than that.
Yeah, and that it was an ancient, like you said, sacred, holy water place where indigenous people from all over came. Yeah, and so that's what did that bring together some of the stuff that you had been learning?
It really
in a big way?
did. Like, because I was mentioning to Angie, like there was in the collages you'll see kind of glimpses of native art or depictions of reverence of like I took some images from an old codex that a Spanish priest did that was studying, I think, Mayans, and because I didn't know of any specific hyperlocal art like that or like old art like that, but I would overlay images of what was depicted was like Mayans and a spring source, and I would like overlay that with some of the collage maps to kind of indicate like there is this presence of native people in the area, and that I was wanting to get more into like understanding origin stories in this area or in this land, and then being told about white shaman, it like very clearly shows that like this is obviously like there is a history of an origin story.
I love
and that like native people knew of this entire escarpment basically, and had, as far as I understand, the white shaman murals depict like almost like a map all of the springs, all of Texas basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar with the springs that we're talking about, it's in San Antonio, New Braunfels, San Marcos, and Austin, which you mentioned, and I never even thought about that, all along I-35.
Yeah.
And so does it keep, as the escarpment, now that I know that that's the name for it, does that keep going up I-35 past Austin?
Yeah, it goes all the way through Waco,
Okay.
like towards Dallas. I don't know if 35 maps it, but it is an odd coincidence, like such a modern invention of the highway is like overlaying this beautiful water source.
And I guess that I've also heard that there's like a sort of ring that it continues in a circle west from Waco, and then goes into West Texas, where there's other springs, because there's springs all over.
Yeah.
A lot of them are dried out though. But then it comes down before you get to like the arid West Texas, and then down and scoops down into Del Rio.
Wow.
And then back up again. I think maybe Gary might have shown that or something at one point. But I also really like how we were talking about earlier, the migratory sort of connection of humans, and following these waters. And so how do you see that? I don't know, I guess because you studied urban planning, is that correct?
Yeah.
How do you connect these sorts of ideas or whatever with what you're doing now, or maybe just how people move now?
Yeah, I think the usage of maps is certainly embedded within the field of urban planning. So that's kind of like why the maps, or why the collages show a lot of maps, is because of like my schooling. Like we learn how to make maps. I knew like where to find public data and stuff like that to make maps and stuff.
And do you, when you think of land, do you think like that? Do you, in your mind?
Yeah, there is like a top-down view of like, I think of, this stretch of highway that runs through San Antonio or around San Antonio, or like state boundary lines. But then also what I'm trying to also learn is also a non-map, like a non-territorial understanding of the land, which is like something not a lot of people do, or even know that you can understand the land without a piece of paper or your Google Maps. And I think that's also really interesting about White Shaman is, I think some of the depictions show the land just drawn out as a drawing, instead of, this spring is, 10 miles to the east of the city, or, is due north or something. But in terms of the planning and migration, I think that is something I do want to address in the project, or try to wrangle with, because this area, San Antonio, Austin, is slated to be like a huge migrant, like tons of people are going to be moving into the area.
Wait, finish that. You were about to say migrant.
Like migration into this area.
Yeah, I never saw it that way. Yeah, this huge metropolis that they have planned.
Everyone
and it is people migrating here.
Yeah. And there's also the need for reverence for the land and for the aquifers. And if the people that are coming in and we're not able to sustain like their presence here, then we're going to be causing a lot of destruction and trauma to the land itself. So then it becomes it might possibly become like a site for trauma in terms of land resources.
In your studies at UTSA, did they talk about how San Antonio, because what's unique and interesting about the way San Antonio developed is that downtown is not in the center of the city, right? It's like real low south, because in the late 70s and 80s, they developed so much on the northern side. Did they talk about there was a really big fights to not develop on the north side because of it being right over this sensitive part of the aquifer, which I think I saw in one of your something on one of your sites.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I remember learning about that, but that's something. I mean, I could definitely see how that can be like super influential on the development of the city.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I forgot when it was, maybe when I was a teenager, about the PGA building a really big golf course on the north side that was over the aquifer. Of course, since then, they've developed that whole outside 1604 northwest part.
Oh, that far north. I kept thinking of San Pedro north.
Closer in.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm talking about because UTSA was built in 1978, and the reason UTSA was built is because there's no public schools in San Antonio, and so they're like, we need a public university. And then it was a big controversy because they built it so far north, and when it was built in 1978 or 76, I think 78, it was farmland. Yeah. It was all farmland all out there. And it was real controversial because they were like, okay, well, how are all of the, people who need an education down here on the south and west and east sides, how are they supposed to get up there? But it was really just about opening up the development pathway to the north side. So that was only, 40-something years ago? Yeah. Yeah, and now look at, right, it was farmland, and it is so developed, highly developed, and even, way farther, and continuing to go further. So yeah, they were really trying to not develop that land at all because of how sensitive it is over the aquifer. Maria Berriosabel, she was a councilwoman at the time of a lot of those fights, and she fought really hard and was sometimes the only council member to vote no on a lot of those projects. And so she did a lot of work trying to protect the aquifer. She had said to me once that it's one of the last large freshwater sources in the entire world.
Wow.
Yeah, which makes me nervous about why is Elon Musk so obsessed with Austin, San Antonio? Yeah, he wanted to build a subway underneath
sounds
from
ridiculous.
downtown to the airport, and that's all like that's where the first spring is. That's where the San Antonio River starts. That's where that spring is. I'm like, what does he know? Is what I wonder.
He's just lazy and he don't want to see us. He just wants to be able to go downtown and not, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's funny how the gentrification continued throughout the years, because when they were taking away mobile home neighborhoods in the south side, they were doing the same out there near UTSA, because there were still mobile home neighborhoods with families and a freaking pet cemetery that they just like bulldozed through.
You mean recently?
This was like, within the past like 10 years, I guess.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's grown so much by UTSA. I said that yesterday when I spoke at the Health Equity Forum, is that when I went to UTSA, I could pay my rent, $500 one bedroom, easily by waitressing. Like, I could get by myself.
That's like Kansas prices.
Yeah, now I looked up that unit and it's $1,200 right now. I'm like, that is over a 100% rent increase. That is so unsustainable.
How are you going to go to school?
How?
Pull that off.
Yeah, I do wonder that. And I'm concerned about that for my kids. Urban planner, Louise, what do you think? How do we because let's talk about that too, how you did your thesis on housing in urban planning at UTSA. And, if you want to talk about what you kind of studied there, but also I am curious, what in your perspective is a solution or some solutions to the affordable housing crisis?
Oh man.
Yeah, I know.
It's such a hard,
it is
hard
hard
way to answer. Well, I'll go into the thesis stuff. So I got my master's recently this year.
Yay!
Congratulations.
From UTSA in urban and regional planning, and I did my thesis on corporate landlords in San Antonio, and I basically studied from 2018 through 2022 the growth and the characteristics of corporate landlords in the city. I showed between 2018 and 2020 there was a presence of corporate landlords in the city already that kind of followed national trends. And then after 2020, there was a statistical significance of an increase of their presence here. With that said, they operate in both realms of single family and multifamily, and then also like inventory build outs for potential build to rent communities.
Do you want to explain that? Because you had to explain it to me.
Yeah.
Build to rent.
Yeah, build to rent community is a developer, a home builder company will build out, a subdivision, and then just rent it out. They don't sell the units. They don't sell the houses to individuals or anyone. So they're the developer and property manager, basically. And that's been happening over the past couple of years, where you'll have a corporate landlord partnering up with a home builder, and then you get these build to rent communities that are part of a bigger portfolio of a corporate landlord.
And what kind of houses are these?
These are your basic single family home.
Okay.
In San Antonio specifically, we noticed a lot of their geographical placement is outside 1604. Like where all the new subdivisions are, just blankets of land that are being bought up, converted from farmland.
On all directions?
It's mostly, I'm trying to remember the maps. I think far east side, like way out.
Which would become part of the metropolis, the San Antonio Austin metropolis. Yeah,
I mean, this is all part of that migration point we were making, with the development of UTSA a long time ago, and then with all these homes being built, there is like a tying of Austin, San Antonio Metroplex in the works, basically. But going back to the corporate landlords, they do buy up land around the west side too, not inner west side, but far out west side.
And I'm sorry. So are these like brand new, like nice homes, like KB homes or
yes,
nice or whatever? But like, yeah. So that surprises me because like I'm like, oh, these people are homeowners, but they're all renting, or at least a lot of them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To rent a big
home.
A big home.
Well, it also it makes a little bit of sense considering this is a military city too. I don't know. That just like for me, that's at least one point to it that a lot of these
that's true.
People are in and out of San Antonio.
Yeah. So there's that activity, but then within San Antonio itself, you have corporate landlords buying up homes across established neighborhoods. And in the analysis, I show that after 2020, they specifically bought homes that were in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods across the city, or across the county rather. And within each census tract, they bought homes that were under the median home price. So they were, targeting like poor, Black, Hispanic neighborhoods in the city. I'm working on getting that work published with my advisor and another PhD student, just to update this analysis and get it more prepared for a journal article. And I think our goal is to get this information verified, and if it does, get it into the hands of like affordability policymakers in Texas or in the city. In the thesis, I write a couple of recommendations. One recommendation is specifically for targeting affordability within the context of a corporate landlord, being a renter from a corporate landlord, is to have like public rental registries in the city, which is like, if I'm a landlord, I have to submit some kind of document to the city that I'm publicly renting out my unit or my house, and people can look up the property online and see like, is who I'm going to be potentially renting from someone local or someone that's just outside of the country or is part of a bigger firm. Because, and I go into the paper, like other trends that have happened across the U.S., like in Atlanta, there's been findings that corporate landlords evict at higher rates than your typical mom and pop landlords, and evict more so Black and Hispanic people, that they, will increase your rent over 100% or something like that, something too unsustainable for the renter. That's one recommendation. Another recommendation, which is, and these both recommendations like really go hard against like the Texan kind of political stance. With being a rental registry, you don't, like, there's an incentive, or I guess for a landlord to not know, for their information to not be public.
Yeah.
To go protest.
Yeah. And then the other one is to restrict the purchasing of single family homes by corporate entities. That's like a huge one that I don't know will come to fruition, just because that's like an encroachment on someone's rights to purchase something.
Because corporations are people, according to policy.
Yeah, so the solution to the affordable housing crisis, I think there's, it's so complex. Like, I'm still so young in understanding and seeing what has what has helped in other communities. And for San Antonio specifically, I don't really know. Like, you can build more housing, but then, you also have to confound with like the bottom line of the developer who has to make the money from building it. And it's such a really hard, difficult thing.
Yeah, I'm really inspired by listening to you and having come up with solutions, though, because Angela and I were at the Health Equity Symposium yesterday, and me and our last guest, Rebecca, and one of my other friends spoke at the housing breakout session for it, and that was ultimately, and would you say, kind of what it came down to for our session was just like coming up with solutions and speaking up. Like, let me tell you that, like, you coming up with that solution and bringing it up places, bringing it up to council members, because look, honestly, I've worked with and against the city council and mayor and the departments for 6 years now. They're not smart. Like, they're really, they don't know about this stuff. They don't know about this stuff. And so when you go up with your expertise and say it, like, they really do take it into consideration for policy. And so, so that's really powerful. And then, so that was my point, is that, like, the end of it was, like, just speaking up with whatever expertise that you have. And for you, it's, this academic background with the data to prove it, which, data just like means everything for them, because then they have, like, the information to be able to advocate for it further. I will say, though, that, like, for me, like, that's an important role, that's an important place. For me, it's also about getting the people who are most impacted to speak up. Yesterday, I heard, I don't think you were there. At the end, I heard from somebody that, so Mission Trails was a mobile home park on the south side that when they started redeveloping the river, then this mobile home park on the river got bought out. Everyone got displaced and they built apartments on top of. But there was a really big fight against it. And so there was community members helping organize all of those mobile home park tenants to bring awareness to it. And had that not happened, what I heard yesterday was that there's this mobile home park more south that was potentially going to happen to, but instead the city was taking bond money to help the tenants buy out the land so that they will permanently own that mobile home park. That wouldn't have happened without the Mission Trails tenants speaking up. And so that's just like how powerful it is when you do use your voice. And so, I'd like to offer that bringing that, you could just like call your council member and be like, can I have a meeting with your supervisor, the head of office or whatever, any of your staff, and sit down with them. And I can't express enough. They really don't know. They're so busy. They have so much coming at them all the time about a gazillion different issues that when you bring information and put it into their mind, this is how I always see it. You put it in their mind and then they repeat it back out on the mic and it goes onto the record. It gets into media. It gets into more people's heads. And so it's really that simple to make difference in policy. And so, that is my, me feeling inspired, by you, coming up with solutions.
You're District 1, right?
I am,
Okay. We have a long history of gentrification here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
As do most major cities.
I wanted to, because when we came up with this podcast idea, it was with the water. Kind of as the focal point of it all and the sacredness of it, but also as like in consideration of all of our guests, there was a lot of like housing people with experience in housing, and in my mind I kind of kept being like, how to make to me there's a connection, right? There's a direct connection between the water, the land, and housing today. but I wasn't sure how to like sort of bring that connection together. Cause like, as we bring more guests on, I was like, how do we like, it's this like mystical, sacred water podcast, but how do these like housing activists come into that? It makes sense in my mind, but I didn't know how to like articulate it or verbalize, and I still don't think I do. And I feel like you are just exemplifying all of that in that your fascination with the water and history of this land and how that relates to urban planning. Is it possible for you to re-articulate what I'm trying to say like from your perspective, because like I still don't really know, although you are the epitome of it right now.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Starting the project and the collage work, it was so separated from my research and interests like in school that I had not tried to make that connection. The connection that I am circling around in my head right now is the notion of like migration, people wanting to live here. And I think I'll go back to this concept of like reverence for the land. Yeah. So to live here is to be reverent to, and I guess this can be applied everywhere across the world, but to be reverent to the land that you're living on, but specifically in San Antonio, to have reverence for the sacred waters, the land itself here. And when thinking about like gentrification and the people who have been displaced, they've been removed from their like their homes or their homelands, in which there should be an advocacy to bring them back or a way to get them stay put. I don't take the stance that like I think gentrification happens. There's no way to completely stop it, but there are ways to stop the fastness of it happening. And I think that's like for me, that's the issue that I would want to tackle with housing is like, if you are going to build new developments and have these apartments be at market rate, have some of those units be for like established residents, keep them at the same rate that they're at, or and like have a way to keep residents there for as long as possible. Yeah, it's a hard thing to like say and make the connection between housing specifically, because also with housing here or in the modern world, it's like single family homes or apartments, and not like homes that have generations in them. I know a lot of San Antonians that are from here, or even just have like a Mexican, Hispanic background where you do have generations living in one household. And for like the newcomers, it's usually across the country that come in and want new single family homes. They want just a one home for one family. And that can contribute to sprawl, and then that gets into like environmental issues of like not being sustainable for the land itself, things like that. So I think there is, like, now I feel like I'm swirling around the connection.
There has to be, because I've been so interested in it, and now that you have the exact same interests in the land and the water and housing, I'm like, there's something about, forming connections to the land and recognizing the importance of home, of like having a place that's like meaningful to you, and honoring, like you said, the sanctity of it. I love that.
And you mentioned the word before, trauma, but it was a different kind of word.
Yeah.
Was it terra trauma or something like that?
It was geotrauma.
Geotrauma.
Yeah.
And I really remembered when you used that word and when you were talking about that, because I see the connection too is like an appreciation for the land's journey, you know, the ever-changing journey of the land. And for so many years, right, millions of years, it's gone through these different traumas to get to that place, sort of like people who get here. They go through all kinds of trauma, the journey to get here, you know, and then so there's got to be a reverence and respect and acknowledgement of that. When you go to ceremony and take medicine, eat peyote, which I've done, I don't know if I didn't eat enough or something, but I didn't have too much of an experience in that sort of a way. But what I've heard is that the experience really connects you to the land. Like you really feel that connection to the land in a way where we disrespect it. So like, you know, when I think of fracking, how we're disrespecting the land and what it's gone through, and here we're just poking holes and extracting what took millions of years to create and to get there. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
no, it's all like complex stuff, like we were saying in the beginning, this concept of a spiral, right? And it's like it makes sense, but it's systemic, and so you can't bring a gazillion different things that are interconnected into a single thought, except like through this process, right, of just discussing it and making sense of it while processing it.
Yeah, I'll go into a little bit about the project itself. So yeah, the project itself is this whole concept of a reverence for the land and water. But also because, like, I'm not from Texas. I'm not from this land. And so I've always been wanting to understand it. And for me, it's asking questions like what's here, and why, and what has happened here. And then I start to investigate, like, I think of it like a detective crime scene or something. And I start the pinboard with geology, looking at the development of the earth, the cosmological trauma that formed the earth, and then going into like native knowledge on the cosmic and origin stories of these waters and this land of this part of Texas. And then another element of the project is like romantic thought, like old the romantics who would like look at the sublime and nature to try to recover like a lost self that was happening during the Industrial Revolution. And that's where this concept of geotrauma comes in, which is instead of a sublime experience where an exterior visual account of the earth, or looking at the earth and being like so overwhelmed that your senses can't comprehend what you're seeing, that it's not an exterior and interior conflict, but that the exterior struggle or the traumas of the earth are within you as an organic being on the inorganic earth. And that, you know, the crust of the earth is like the only layer that has life. Everything underneath it is like this inorganic material that is that like over millions of years you get to see the blossoms of what it's produced, those beautiful minerals and rocks.
The granite.
And granite. And that brings me to like Enchanted Rock. Like that's going to be a chapter in the book, which is, it's a place where you can touch the flesh of the sun's flesh. Like when you think of the sun, like the formation of the earth is like this protoplanetary disk glob of sun ejection that then solidifies, and then you have this event of Enchanted Rock where part of the magma is trying to come through, but then it cools off too quickly, and the surrounding dirt and stuff over millions of years starts to erode off, and then now you can see granite as this like big punch through the crust.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So there is that, like the point of passage into deep earth and time. And for me, something that I'll bring up in the book or this project is like the passage of time too. I think when it comes to reverence, I think things like clocks or calendars and things like that really put a constraint on like how you live life. Like, I mean, throughout the week, my work week is just like filled with meetings and deadlines and tasks and stuff. But in the few weeks that I take like a vacation to the Four Corners or something, and like time slips, like I try not to look at the clock, and time slips away, just to be like present and enjoy life in the moment. And with the confrontation of like aquifers or deep geology, you only understand it through like our understanding of clock time. And so we understand like minerals and rocks form over millions of years, but for the earth, that it's just happening.
Yeah.
And so that's like a point of the project that I want to kind of flesh out. And so there is like a conflict there with the modern world of like, not all time can happen at once. You can't have this like long period of like deep time that's happening, and then also have like your miniature time or I would say like administrative time, where like you have your seconds clocked, you have your minute, day scheduled, and still try to be reverent to the earth. Like I think there's a removal of the clock that might be necessary, and just saying that itself, like removing the clock from the modern world, is like catastrophe for us.
Oh yeah. Total chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask like what kind of your big vision and goal for when people pick up your book or when they look at your Instagram, like what they get out of it. And when you just said those words, the passage of deep earth and time, that just sort of like took me into that zone of what I feel like is like where you would desire people to be able to go to like see
sure.
that reverence.
Yeah. And you know, I wasn't grown up or brought up in this style of fashion, like of having a connection with the earth. You know, I used to view and enjoy the beauty of nature and the planet and stuff, but it wasn't until just a few years ago, like having an actual reverence for it. Or
how did you grow up? I know you are from Lawrence, Kansas. Yeah. Woohoo! But like, so what was your experience? Because you're surrounded by nature in Lawrence, in Kansas. Like, first of all, the weather.
All four seasons. And
not just all four, but like
springs.
The rain. Y'all have an abundance of water.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all go through droughts. Don't get me wrong, but
For
like
sure.
abundance of water. We spoke about the soil and how it's not like our caliche, you know, putting that shovel in, it goes all the way in the first time you put that in the dirt. So what was your experience with with nature like out there? Did you go fishing?
No, I mean, I grew up in Kansas. I was 3 years old, and then we moved. But I would still visit every summer and
Like a
winter
home base.
for family.
Where did you move to?
My dad was military, so we moved to Seattle, and then to San Antonio, and then to Germany and England, and then we came back to San Antonio.
Oh,
Nice.
But like nature growing up, yeah, we would, like, I remember being in Seattle as a young boy, Cub Scout, would do all the forests and stuff and walking and with my parents.
And those are forests.
Yeah,
in
those are
Seattle,
beautiful
Washington
forests.
State, yeah.
And then don't really have too much memory of land here when I was here as a young boy too. I remember going to the caverns. That might be like an initiation to the book, you know,
right.
seeing the caverns. And then in Germany and England, that was kind of starting the formation of like my interest of finding the earth beautiful, because there is so many trails and public spaces to go through. In England, you have the right to roam, so you can walk through a farmer's ranch or a farmer's farm.
Really?
Yeah.
What? No private property, like signs like plastered everywhere like
No,
here?
not
No
really.
kidding.
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
In Germany, what was your experience there? Where
Germany-
did you live?
We lived at the Ramstein base, not on the base, but we lived near it. And that's kind of southwest Germany, close to the French border and Belgian border. But yeah, there were so many beautiful trails. I mean, we lived in a little village, and the end of our street cut through, or like there was a small bumpy road through some farmland, and then you hit a trail, like a paved trail through the forest that was behind the village.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, that was like a huge introduction to like or like a retouch with my young boy in Seattle and being in love with the trees there, because there's really big trees in Germany too. And then coming here to Texas, like I had like a negative view of like the desert. I was like, nothing's out here. But yeah, and then just finding that this land is actually really, really beautiful. West Texas is super beautiful. This year, I've like extended my understanding of the Southwest from El Paso and onwards. Really liking Taos, New Mexico. That place is beautiful. The caldera out there is amazing. And then hitting up like Mesa Verde, Hovenweep National Monument, and then like Petrified Forest area, Grand Canyon, and just finding like all of this place. This place is like so beautiful, and yeah, so like along that, and then coming back into Texas after these travels, I've started to pick up the project again, finding that this area is like super green in terms of life and trees and stuff. Like, I don't know, when I first lived here, I don't know, probably 10 plus years ago, I always thought this was like a deserty kind of dry place, and then I come back and it's like actually very, very green when it is like a good rainy season. And yeah, there's just so much life in this area that's amazing.
It's so funny. I had the exact same experience when I lived in San Antonio for college and then left for like 10 years and came. Like I had that same exact vision. I was like, oh, there's nothing there. It's like not even green at all. It's South Texas, super deserty. And then I came back and I was like, what was I like?
Yeah,
why did I have that in my head? And especially like to go to the rivers.
Yeah.
when I am on those rivers just floating, man, like I am just like, this is heaven.
Yeah.
This is pure. It's so green all around me. These trees are beautiful. This water is green even, but like the pretty, river green. And it's just like, I'm like, this is literal heaven here. And it's like, there's not other parts of Texas that are like this. I'm like, in Dallas, you can't just go to 50 different water spots within an hour and a half of you. We have so many different places that you can just chill in a river. And it's so magical. I was like, I totally missed out on this somehow last time I was here.
Yeah.
And I guess because I was coming back for good. Like I knew that I was like coming to settle and with my family and kids and stuff. And so I was like, okay, like this is home now.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that was it. It was transitory before. And this time I was like, no, this is home. And so I wanted to develop that reverence.
Yeah.
And I certainly did. And, had the same experience too, where I was like, there's something special about this land.
Yeah.
Imagine the days when all the waterways here in San Antonio were swimmable and clean. How heavenly
they will be again.
They will be again, right? But yeah, we're surrounded by water, but we can't like jump in it. But imagine if there were swimming holes everywhere, like in Austin or San Marcos, and we're just like going to Blue Star and jumping in the river there or wherever, we're surrounded by water.
It's amazing. And I wonder, do they teach you at all in urban planning how to clean the water? Is there any way to bring our river back?
I think my track in the urban planning program was just housing. I didn't really focus on anything else. But I have good friends in the San Antonio River Authority that do take environmental stuff very seriously, and they're really big advocates there. I think there's like tons of stuff that you have to contend with, like with the cleanliness of the water, in regards to like all the stormwater drainage stuff picks up a lot of trash.
Stronger regulation, like the zoo pours its trash water into the river.
Yeah.
Ew.
Ridiculous.
Why did we allow that?
I know.
Sacred water,
do
land
whatever
of
they want.
Sacred water, and they're like, well, let's just trash it. Make it undrinkable and then swimmable. And we I think we brought this up with Alicia, but we had come across like a postcard of somebody in like the 20s who sent it to a friend from San Antonio, and it was like, the rivers here are incredible. You can walk all along it any day of the year. It's the same temperature, and there's kids of all colors and ages swimming around like ducks in this river
From day to night. That's what the little postcard said.
Yeah.
That's heaven, right?
Yeah.
And that was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
What did we do? Where did we go wrong? I mean, I know, but nonetheless. Actually, like I like to end with that. What is your vision for the city of San Antonio, as far as like all of your information, expertise goes? If you could just like wake up in 20 years and it look exactly how you want it to look, and people recognizing everything that like you've learned and stuff, what does that look like?
Oh man, that's I have a really hard time with envisioning. I just hope that things like the water systems get back into a healthy situation where people can enjoy the waters as they once were used. Because this place, this whole area should be like overflowing with springs, and you should be able to just go get a bucket and drink from the aquifers, or like even like I just passed the Alamo the other day and was reminded of the well that's there. Like that should be still open and for the public to use. There should, I guess the envisionment is like a severe course correction for development, for new development, basically. Like, I don't know what that looks like, if that looks like completely stopping development now so that in 20 years things clear up, or if that means building in sustainable ways, or
both.
Or both, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or it's just keep on having these conversations and figure it out as we go. Okay, so your Instagram.
It's Eaten Up by the Sea.
Eaten Up by the Sea. And is there anywhere else people can find your work?
Yeah, there's a link that I've made on Arena. It's like a platform where you can put up projects, and I've started like a link to get all my resources in order. I kind of want that to be a living document, or like a living link. So I think over the next year or so, I'll be in there, like drafting up things, writing things up, adding new resources, things I'll reference, so that like users themselves can get in there, see what I'm working with, and maybe something from what I'm working on or write, someone might take off with an idea.
Oh yeah, that's great. It's like I don't know, like public participation of like we can all get involved with this, and then it expands upon your work too. Yeah,
and I mean, just thinking now, like going that route might prove like helpful to open it up, like make it be a communal book or a public book or something that people can contribute to. Yeah.
Is there a clap thing on here?
Oh, there should be. I don't.
Don't want to just start
It's gonna go
throwing
wah
sounds.
wah.
Yeah, we have cool sounds on our soundboard. We haven't figured out how to use yet. Cool.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's what I appreciate about your work is like it brought in this different new perspective of what we're looking at, and it reminded me of the images with the maps and the codex images, because back then we had an understanding of Earth as we experienced it physically. We walked everywhere, and so like we were talking about the White Shaman mural and how it's a map, but things depicted on there don't show things in distance and space that we think in our minds back then. It's describing textures of the land and that sort of a thing. So it looks different, or it might be a shorter distance, but it's got the texture, and so, and then you don't have to be out in the ocean to use the skies to navigate,
Right.
So, they had an understanding not only of that, and then also the resources they're eating as they're migrating around. And so you have this, digestive history in your mind too of the land, so you remember that spot has this certain food, and in your mind you're making the connection of why those foods are only found in the hill country or by the shore or that sort of a thing. So like that, I really appreciate that, the perspective that you brought.
Yeah, and that for me, that food part especially brings up the time. Like, we create our own time right now, and when you have to live, it's where you have to learn the land and like what grows and when to grow and stuff. Your time is connected to the land. You know that when certain plants, certain berries start growing, that it's like this time of year. That's totally connected to the earth and not some like calendar.
Right.
That has been just like kind of given to you.
Yeah.
So that's quite like that.
Yeah,
angle.
It's very, like in terms of like going back to the maps and time, like these are systems of like striation.
What does that mean?
Striation is like, I think it means like lines or layers, or like a grid system kind of thing. That's like placed upon something that doesn't have that kind of dividing up.
Like a topo map?
Yeah,
like those
yeah,
sort of
topo
layers?
maps or just any kind of map itself. Yeah, I can go into maps too. Like there's just some cool stuff to know about maps. Yeah.
To bring you back for maps.
Yeah.
The maps episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Luis.
Yeah, thank you very
I'm
much.
so glad
Thank you.
that you and Angela connected.
Yeah.
And that we got to bring your perspective, especially early on, because it is such a important part of our puzzle that we're kind of trying to put together here. Cosmic Water Podcast.
Yeah. I love that I think that's why I had reached out, was because of the name.
Oh,
Was
okay.
that it was Cosmic Waters.
That's right.
And it was something that I was, writing up about and thinking through
Oh, that's
for the
so
project.
funny.
Yeah.
On point, y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much, and hopefully you'll be back.
For sure. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
it.
Thank you.
Oop, that's a wrap.
There you go.